Good morning and welcome again to Word of Faith Fellowship Responds. This is Mark Morris with Word of Faith Fellowship. We're so glad that you are joining us today. We have been sharing with you the wonderful things that God has done in our lives. We've had so many testimonies about how God has delivered us from so many different things in our lives and redeemed our life, restored our life, transformed us, and made us who He wants us to be, bring us into the families that He has for us. And it's been so good to share about what God has done. And so today I have Elizabeth Spencer. She came from Wilmington to our church. When did you come in? Was it 2007?
2007.
And she has been a major blessing in our church. She is part of our prison ministry. She also helps wherever else she's needed.
Yes.
She has family here. She has grandchildren here and children here, and she keeps real busy taking care of everybody. But she has been a blessing in our church. She's going to share with you today how God has changed her life. She had a life before she came here many years ago of alcohol abuse, illegal drugs, very abusive relationship, misery, suicide. It goes on and on. But here she sits today to tell you how God has transformed her life. So let's hear from Elizabeth.
Yes, I want to say, first of all, I am so grateful that I can share with you all. And I want to start with my growing up time. When I was growing up, I was around about 17. I wanted to try to find a better life because when I was growing up, we worked in the field a lot. We did a lot of field work. My mom had 8 girls, and my dad already had 2 boys. So I had 2 stepbrothers. And so my mom, she had all these children, and it was just her. My dad, he was a barber. He cut hair, but he wasn't a go-getter like my mom was. She worked hard to make sure that we had some things that we needed. So we worked in the field, but I really know that it was another place that I wanted to go. I had this thing that if I go to New York, I would get a better job. So I got this paper. During that time, they had sleep-in jobs, and they advertised them in the paper. So I got a paper, and I looked in it, and there was a job there at Brooklyn, New York, a sleep-in job, which is a job that you go to New York. They send you your ticket. You go to New York, and they put you in their home, and you take care of their children, or you do housework, or whatever they need you to do. And I thought that was great. So I go to New York at 17 on a sleep-in job. So when I got there, I never left from home before in my life. So when I got there, I was kind of astonished, and I stayed there for about 24 hours. And my brothers, they had moved up there years ago. One of them was working to Kennedy's Airport as a leader. So anyways, I go to New York. I go on this sleep-in job. I stayed there 24 hours. I left, and I found my brothers. They was living on Utica Avenue in Brooklyn. He had a 3-story apartment house. So one of the brothers lived on the top floor, on the 3rd floor, and the other one lived on the ground floor. So he took me in, and I stayed up there with him. So then I got a job at the airport. At Kennedy's Airport, I worked there. Well, I kept myself pretty much when I was a young girl, teenager. I didn't go out with boys. I didn't have boyfriends. I didn't believe in that. I wanted to keep myself, so I did that. So anyways, I had this friend. Her name was Maxine. And I trusted her. I really did. My brother had a lot of parties in his house downstairs. So I would go to work and I come home and they was having their parties. My sister was up there also, my oldest sister. She had moved up there before I did.
And you came from, did you say you were born in Wilmington?
Oh, yeah.
Is that right? Or near Wilmington?
I was born in Burger, North Carolina, 25 miles outside of Wilmington.
Okay.
That was my biological home. So I left from there and I went to New York and we needed that. But anyways, when I went up there, I was so vulnerable. I didn't know nothing. But I went up there thinking I could get a better life, a better job, and everything. I got tired of working in the field. It was hard work. But anyway, I did it. But I had my friend Maxine, so I trusted her. So she was going out to clubs and things, so I started joining her, going out to clubs, going to parties and things like that. So she asked me that I want to go to Long Island to a club. I said, yes, I'll go with you. Well, the people that was driving the car, the guy, I knew him because he was a friend of my brother's. So I just felt like it was okay. So I jump in the car with her and her friend and him. So he goes, I'm thinking I'm going to Long Island to a club. Well, he made a detour. I'm like, where's you going? And so they go up in this place like a garbage dumpster. So that's when it all started. So physically, he attacked me. I was so broken. I was so hurt. So I go back home. I tell nobody. I tell no one. She knew, but she didn't say anything either. But I tell no one. I was hurt. So anyway, out of that place, I start drinking, smoking, partying. I just didn't care anymore. I was so hurt. I didn't care about anything because I had saved myself. I'm 21 years old. Saved myself from a child up to 21 years old, and then I got attacked. Well, anyway, I started drinking a lot, so I met Arthur. Arthur is my children's father. Anyways, I met Arthur, and he was very abusive. He was very wild. I didn't know he was younger than I was. He just moved in. He moved in. So anyways, when I met Arthur, he was very abusive. So he started beating on me badly. He kept beating on me. He'd come home. He would be on that marijuana, drinking, and he would just attack me. And anyways, one night he came home. I didn't tell you this. One night he came home and he had a pistol. And he just, just put it in my face. I ought to kill you. And I'm like, oh, help me, Jesus. I didn't say that then because I didn't know Jesus. But anyways, I was so frightened. I was afraid of him. So I tried to get away. So my cousin, she lived in an apartment across from me. So I used to go there and she'd take care of my children. And she would give me money to feed them. So anyways, she helped me get away. So I had a sister in New Jersey, Camden, New Jersey, right across the bridge from Philadelphia. So she took me and my children in. I had 3 children then. So I went to live with her. I lived with her about 1.5 years before he knew who I was. So he found out somehow where I was. So he came up there, and I took him back in.
This is Arthur.
Arthur.
He found you.
He found me. And so I took him back in. I don't know, it was a place in my heart. I just felt sorry for him because when he was a child, his mom died when he was 2 years old. He had a stepmom that was very abusive with him. And they tried to tell their dad, and the dad wouldn't listen. But anyways, I took him in, and it started up again. And I had a 3rd child. He would go out with his women's, even come to the house, and I didn't know it was his girlfriend, but he would come to the house, and he would jump on me. If I say anything, he would smack me. He was very mean. So I would talk with my sister, and she would talk with him because I had a sister up there. She still lived up there. So I said, I got to get away again. So what I did, my sister, I stayed up there with them for 4 years. My sister helped me to get back home to my biological home in Burgaw. So I went back home to live with my mom and dad.
So you actually moved back to Burgaw, North Carolina, where you grew up.
Yes, I did.
And did you take at that time, how many children did you have?
I had 4 children at that time.
Okay, and so they moved with you?
Yeah, I took my children with me. And they moved with me, and my mom let me live there. So I got me a trailer. Mm-hmm. And Me and my children moved in there, and we stayed there for about a year before he found out where we was. Then he come down there. When he come down there, I took him back in. He started cutting himself. He was very abusive. He started beating on me, and my children would just cry, "Dad, please don't beat Mom. Please don't beat Mom no more." And then my oldest son, his name is Torturous. He was 9 years old. He looked at my dad. He said, "If you hit my mom again, I'm gonna kill you." So he backed off some. So I was going out to clubs and things, getting drunk, smoking, and all that kind of stuff because I was so hurt. I didn't know what to do. So I was trying to find some kind of peace. So I started drinking and smoking. I had my children. I loved my children. I went in the bathroom one evening with no one there. And I took all these pills out and I laid them on the sink. I said, "I'm going to kill myself." And so when I said that, I heard this voice say, "Elizabeth, what you going to do about your children?" And I said, "Oh, what am I going to do about my children?" So I didn't do that. So I went on with them. So I had another child. His name was Cornelius. So I kept on. Going to the clubs and things. And so he found out that this guy that owned the club, that I talked with him. He was a very pleasant person to just talk with. So he thought it was something else. So he came in there one night and he shot.
This is Arthur.
Arthur.
Arthur thought you had some kind of relationship with this man.
Him, yes.
Okay.
So he came in and he shot him. But he didn't kill him. So they arrested him and they put him in jail and he went to prison. He went to prison for about 3 years. In the meantime, I was still down there with my mom and dad. And my mom was something else. But she went to this tent service one night and she got born again. I didn't believe it at first. I said, "I do not believe this." So I started watching her. Her life started changing. She had a club that she sold alcohol and things like that. They come and party and things. That's how she made her money. She closed that down. She started selling alcohol. She started going to church. She started going to church and she changed. She started praying and she started talking to us about Jesus. And I watched her and I wanted that. I said, "God, if you can change my mom, you can change anybody." So I saw that for 5 years. I watched her. In the meantime, Arthur was in prison for 3 years. That was the time that God really could get to my heart. So Arthur was in prison for 3 years. And so I started going to my mom's church. When I started going to my mom's church, I wanted what she had. So I began to cry out to God. I still was drinking. Come home drunk as a skunk and praying. I knew the Our Father prayer. I knew the 10 Commandments. I knew all of that. I had been reading that in the Bible, so I knew that. But I didn't like what I was doing. I didn't want to be that way. But I didn't know the way out. So anyway, I went to our church and God began to deal with my heart and draw me to Him. I received Christ. He came into my heart. My life changed. Stopped drinking, stopped smoking, stopped partying, didn't want any of that. All I wanted was more Jesus. In the meantime, Arthur was still in prison. Cornelius was about 2 years old at that time. But anyways, I kept on crying out and I kept on praying. And something I'm missing here. because Arthur was on marijuana and drugs and all kinds of stuff. And so he was really, I don't know what was going on with him, but he was really mean to me and my children. But anyways, I started wanting Jesus in my heart. And at that point, he came in and I began to change. I began to want the things of God. So when Jesus came into my heart, I started going to church. I was faithful going to church. And I had a ministry, a prison ministry for 15 years. They chose me for Volunteer of the Year. I got a plaque. I went to Raleigh. It was very good. I loved the prison ministry. And then I got ordained, an ordained minister in our church, the church I was going to. It was a full gospel church. I was there for about 17 years, but I needed more. I needed much more than I had.
Now, when Arthur was released from prison, did you have any more contact with him? You said he was in prison for 3 years. You're now going to church. You're actually getting in the ministry.
Yes.
What happens with Arthur?
Okay. Arthur got out of prison. I went to my pastor. I heard not to marry him, but because I had the children for him, I went to my pastor and I asked him. I said, Arthur's getting out of prison. I said, I know that he's going to come at me. I said, but I'm going to hold on to Jesus. He said, well, you marry him. Go ahead and marry, because he wanted to marry me. He said, go ahead and marry him because you got children for him. So I got married. When Arthur got out of prison, I went to Elizabethtown and I got seated and got married. So it started again. Oh, it was worse. It was like torture. He tortured me. He questioned me about things was in my past when I didn't know him. It was absolutely terrible. So I kept on praying and crying out to God. So I had a friend, her name was Doris. Doris was my friend. We went to school together. So in the meantime, I was at Full Gospel still, but I wasn't getting all what I needed. He had a tent ministry, and I felt like that wasn't where I was supposed to be anymore. So Doris called me on the phone. She said, Elizabeth, she said, you need to come down here. She said, do you know Christians have demons? I said, do they? She said, yes. She said, they have strong prayer down here. And I needed more deliverance. I needed that. So I went down there, and they prayed for me, and it was strong prayers.
Where was this at?
That was in New Jerusalem. No, it was in New Covenant in Wilmington. And the pastor was there was named Sue. And so I went down there at 91. It was in 1991. I went down there. And I loved it. I felt the love of God so strong in that place. And I was still going to my church because, like, I was hot between two opinions. I wanted to leave, but I didn't want to leave, but I didn't know where to go. So anyway, Doris called me, and I went. And I went. So in 1996, my dad died. I was horrified at dead people. It hurted me. My dad died. And I had had some experience with previous people in my family dying. And I was tormented. And I was scared. So Sue asked me, she invited me to go to a seminar at Word of Faith Fellowship in Spindale. So I came to that seminar after my dad died in 96. And the seminar was teaching on, when a person died. And I listened to that preaching and teaching, and it went in my heart, and I got delivered from the fear that God can walk you through death. That God can walk you through death. And God, He really went in my heart, and I got delivered from that fear that I had about death. Because then I understood what it meant, because it was laid out before me. She taught it from the scriptures, and it went straight in my heart. And that fear broke, and I was free ever since, until this day, about death.
Who was preaching on the seminar?
It was Jane Whaley. She was preaching. And when I came in that church, all I could feel was the love of God. And they just welcomed me with open arms. And I just loved it because I was so abused. I was so hurt. Even though Jesus came into my heart, but I was living in a home that was out of control because my husband didn't want Jesus. He wanted his alcohol. He wanted his lifestyle. And I tried. So when I went back home with victory, but I went right back in the same old thing that I left out of. So my mom died in 2005. My mom died in 2005. And I seen that it wasn't going to work being there because he didn't want Jesus. He wanted his lifestyle. And my life was totally different. So I left. I called my friend Doss and asked her, could I come down there and live with them? So I went down there to Wilmington, and I lived with them, and I started going to New Covenant. And I felt so good. I was so happy. My children was growing up then, and my girls had got born again, and they came down to Wilmington too, and Sabrina and Stephans and all them moved down to Wilmington, and we all went to New Covenant. And then God spoke to us to come to New Jerusalem. The World of Faith. God spoke to us to move the Word of Faith, and my family and I moved the Word of Faith. And we come up here and we felt the love of God. And I don't understand, I really don't understand how they can say it's abuse in our church. I was healed. I was delivered. I was set free. I'm free still today. I'm so happy. Me and my husband, we are friends. I forgave him for all the abuse that he done, because I know that if he had a new Jesus, he wouldn't have been that way. But I'm so grateful for the Word of Faith. I am so thankful for Jane Whaley and Sam and all the ministers there. I thank God he brought me and my family up here. I had nothing, no money, no nothing. I was so poor. I had nothing. Me and my children had to heat by the oven on the stove for many, many years. We had no running water. We had nothing. I had a husband that cheated on me, went out with women all the time, didn't care, took his money and spent it on gambling. My children was horrified. But when I came up here, my children, my grandchildren, most of them came up here. They are so happy. I've never, ever been in a place like this. I never had a car. I had O'Reilly cars trying to go to work. But God has blessed me with a brand new car. And I'm so grateful. I cannot even express all the love that I feel at the Word of Faith Fellowship with my family. And my husband have come up here, and he's seen it too, but he's not ready. He said he's not ready to give his heart to Jesus. They never left him out. They took hold of him. They still take hold of him and love him. They love him because of the love of God in our heart. We don't want him to be lost. I have 2 sons out there. We don't want them to be lost. So that's the way it is here at the Word of Faith. We love one another. We are taught to love one another. We are taught to love our wife, to love our husband, to love our children, to love our grandchildren. Our children feel the love of God. They are free. We live in a beautiful home. We lack for nothing. I am so, so grateful.
And I'm so glad you, and that's so powerful what you shared, Elizabeth. And it's amazing how here you sit today and you're so happy, you're so full of God's love.
Yes.
And your whole first part of your life was just nothing but
Disaster.
torment, misery. And now you're sitting here and you love everyone. God's redeemed your life. You love Arthur, even though the relationship passed. You realize he didn't know God, and you forgave him, and you're praying for him. And I'm just watching a miracle here as you're sharing what God has done in your life. And you shared about coming to the Word of Faith Fellowship, and it was the same with me. When I came here, I just felt this overwhelming love.
Yes.
And I've heard, you've probably heard too, these lies that when I've heard all these amazing lies out there about our church, that somehow our church takes people's money. You were sharing with me earlier, when you came here, did you have any money to even give the church?
I had no money. I mean, I went to Wilmington. They took care of me down there. I had nothing. I had nothing. I have everything. I have joy. I have peace. I have love. I cannot express. I could be here tomorrow, the next day, and tell you the goodness of God and the blessing here. It was like a healing place,
That's right.
I tell you, no one know the agony and the pain that you go through when you don't have Jesus. I want to let you know that God, Jesus, is there for you.
That's right.
The same as he did for me, he would do for you.
That's great. And thank you so much for sharing that. I hope that those of you listening have been encouraged today, because you really have heard a miracle of how God can take a situation that was so terrible that even as you heard, she wanted to even take her life one night. And you see how God has transformed her life. And that's what God does. He changes our lives. He pulls us out of the deepest, darkest pits, and he restores our life, and he makes us who he's called us to be, which is somebody to serve him, somebody who can actually walk with him and have a relationship with him every day. And when we do that, we are so full of his joy, so full of his happiness, and it's such a powerful testimony we've heard today. So thank you for sharing that. And we thank you for listening to this program today. This is Word of Faith Fellowship, sharing with you what God's done. We are here Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 8:30 to 9. We hope that you will continue to listen to us. And we do have a website with all our prior radio programs that you can actually watch. They're videoed. Our website is wordoffaithfellowship.org. Please go to that, and you'll see more wonderful testimonies. Thank you very much.